Okay, it should be recording now. All right. So hello, everyone. Welcome to today's event about tech at BfE. Just a little introduction about myself. My name is Alec Raymond. I'm a third-year undergraduate student at New York University and the Vice President of Incubation at our New York chapter. So just before we get started, I want to give you a little bit of context as to what Bridges for Enterprise is and the work that we do. So BfE is a nonprofit organization founded in 2015. And what we do is we empower early stage social entrepreneurs to scale their ventures and expand their impact. And we're home to a global community of purpose-driven professionals and students that provide pro bono advisory services to social entrepreneurs in the developing world. So our impact has gone a long way. We've been fortunate enough to advise more than 90 social enterprise startups from 25 countries around the world. We've been doing this by using with more than 200 BfE team members across 24 nationalities across all 5 of our city chapters. So that is Cambridge, Singapore, New York, Vancouver, and Rotterdam. And they do this with the support of more than 300 industry professional mentors who are a part of our BfE network, in combination with more than 10 partnering organizations collaborating for impact. And from this, we've been able to generate over $100,000 worth of donations in kind. So more about the tech team. So our technology team empowers BfE's incubation program through analytics, algorithms, and automation. We've also been able to develop web applications that connect our global community and share BfE's internal resources with the wider social impact and startup community. So with that, I'd like to introduce our speakers today. So we'll start with Kevin Huang, who's our global head of technology. He's currently a PhD student, theoretical machine learning within the Gatsby unit at UCL, and received his bachelor's and master's in mathematics from the University of Cambridge. Next, we have Brittany Howell, our global tech strategies manager, who's currently a PhD student in quantitative genetics within the Wellcome Sanger Institute at the University of Cambridge. She received her bachelor's and master's in genetics and immunology from the University of Adelaide. And finally, we have Xing Liu, who's currently a PhD student studying statistics in the Imperial College of London. He received his master's in mathematics from the University of Cambridge, as well as his bachelor's in mathematics from the Imperial College of London. So today we'll be going over 4 key points. We'll begin with a technology overview, a project presentation on algorithm design, where we'll explain our startup mentor matching algorithm, go into data analytics, move into software infrastructure and DevOps, and conclude with a Q&A and chats within our Gather Town. So with that, I'd like to hand it over to Kevin, our global head of technology, to give our technology overview.
Yeah, thank you so much, Alec, for the introduction. Hi, everyone. I'm Kevin. So I'm the head of technology in BfE. And I'd like to start talking about BfE through, I guess, my own perspective and how I have joined BfE and how it's sort of evolved over the past 5 years. So I first joined when I was an undergrad year 1 in the University of Cambridge. So that was in 2016 when we were just starting out as a team of 10, 20 members, knowing that we want to do something for the social entrepreneurs in the developing world and just trying to explore what's the best model to do it, how do we pool the relevant resources and people to achieve this mission. So I joined as one of the first finance advisory member, providing finance services to our clients. And then fast forward to 2017, I became the director leading the team. And to 2018, yeah, Alec, next slide, please. Yeah, thanks. So I was leading the Cambridge student chapter. And this also sort of coincides with the year when we were registered officially as a nonprofit in Switzerland, and also the year when we expanded globally to build our chapters in Singapore and New York. And as you have seen from Alex's presentation, we then expanded to Canada and Netherlands, and we are really working with a large number of global professional and student volunteers to achieve this mission to help our startups. And at that time, when I was at the Cambridge chapter, that's also when I started to realize that we are getting more and more hurdles in terms of the operations and administrative tasks that we need to do. I also realized that with the large number of startups that we are serving at that point, a lot of data are coming in and out of the organization, left untouched, and they are data that could have otherwise been used to help us understand our operations, understand our impact, and used to help improve the way we operate. So after I stepped down from the student chapter position in 2019, I was fortunate to join the global management team. First, as a global data analytics manager, so continuing on the good work that some people have already been doing to help analyze our internal data. And at the same time, I also helped out as the technical advisory manager to set up BfE's first technical consulting program for our startups. So really bringing technology to help them see how information technology or other kinds of technical advice can help transform their product and business models. Fast forward to 2020, right? So this is the year when things became different for everyone because of COVID and because of this. And as a result, I guess this realization of how reliant we are on technology now. And we have also grown to the scale where we really need something that's more than just standalone tools to help our consultants to with their services. We need something that's of a larger scale, a digital platform that can perhaps automate a lot of the admin tasks that the global management team is doing. So we had the idea of building a full-fledged technology division, and I was fortunate enough to lead this initiative with a couple of really enthusiastic members. And this is the position that I've been in ever since. Right, so next slide, please. Yep. So I talk a little bit about why technology matters in BfE in terms of helping us to automate all these operations that we are doing with the various volunteers and the startups that we are serving. But it's more than just that. So in BfE, we categorize our work into, I guess, 5 branches. And technology is really an integral part of everything. So in incubation, we talk about how technical advice can help startups to improve their product business models. We also use technology to help them automate repetitive work done in the consulting services. And Brie is going to present an example of that after my presentation, right? And we also talk about impact research. So how analyzing data within BfE can help us quantify how much impact BfE make. And this is really important for a nonprofit that's trying to present ourselves to partners and potential grant bodies, because they need to see the numbers to understand what social impact we are making in what sectors, what geography, etc. And finally, it's also about outreach, because when we market our program to entrepreneurs around the world, we are targeting at the emerging markets. So many of whom we do not even interact with in real life. So technology is an integral part of our digital marketing. And in fact, the bridgesforenterprise.com website you see right now is a self-hosted website that the tech team built, hosted on our Azure infrastructure. So really, the way I see technology in BfE is that whatever products that we are building, whatever problems that we are thinking about right now will determine what BfE is going to look like in 3 to 5 years. So our work, while not directly impacting directly changing our entrepreneurs' businesses, is actually extremely important. And one could say it determines the future of where this organization is going to be. So yeah, next slide, please. So I just want to go into a bit more details to help you understand the main tech products that we are trying to build. So I already talked about the public website. So this is something that's already out there facing the public users with a bunch of features such as newsletter subscription and display of impact data pulled from our central database. And we are also trying to build this thing on the right called members portal. So it's essentially an organizational intranet for any stakeholder in BfE to be able to access resources easily and to collaborate on project management. And we already have some work put into that. We are still actively developing it. And this is the key product that's going to automate all our onboarding and administrative operations. In the long run, we are also trying to build this public portal that's in between. And this is a really ambitious product, but also something that's really going to be really impactful. So essentially, BfE, because of our manpower restriction, right? So say we receive about 200 plus startup applications per year. At most, right now, we can only take 10, 12 startups, that's all. But there are so many other startups that couldn't join our program. Maybe they are not ready, or maybe somehow we just have this manpower crunch. We couldn't serve that many startups, but it will still be really useful for them to get access to the learning resources that we have been preparing within BfE that have been built with our experience in working in the emerging market for so many years. So this public portal, we really see it as a learning resource hub, as well as a forum, a place where anyone who's interested in social entrepreneurship, interested in startups, can come together and get access to these resources in BfE without formally joining BfE's program. And for a nonprofit like us, this is really going to extend our impact beyond our existing operation structure. So it's also something that is going to be really new and helpful for the social entrepreneurship community. So it's something we are very, very excited about, and are currently doing a lot of planning about it. And yeah, next slide, please. So I just want to also briefly touch on the tech stack. You probably see this already from the techbridgesforenterprise.com website. And really the thing I wanted to highlight is just the thing at the top left, because we are building 3 main digital products. So all the projects that our student volunteers or professional volunteers are building on, they are not going to be standalone apps. They are just going to be features that come together to this joint product. And as anyone who has worked in a team environment or large digital product will know, in this case, very standardized and smooth code management, integration, and deployment pipeline is really important. So the things I've circled here are the DevOps tools that we are using. Well, some of the tech stack that's involved in DevOps pipeline, so things like Azure, GitHub Action, Docker, Terraform, etc. And I will cover more of that in my talk later on. So next slide, please. And yeah, and I just also want to touch on the various technical disciplines in BfE. So we really cover, well, as I kind of mentioned just now, software development is a big part of BfE Technology's work. So the left column, you can see that we really cover a whole range of software development. So wherever you are interested or specialized in, so be it in design, UI, UX design, front-end design, or if you are interested in backend development and even more architecture stuff like infrastructure, database to security, we generally welcome volunteers from any of these backgrounds to come and help us out. On the right column, there are 2 disciplines that are quite disjoint from software development, but are equally important to BfE's work. So the first one is something I've already talked about, data analytics, looking at the data flowing in and out of the organization, understanding our impact. And then there's also algorithm design and machine learning. So sometimes in BfE, we make very complex decisions that rely on large volumes of data to the extent that it's just not possible for a person or human to go through all those data to make a decision. So we have projects dedicated to designing algorithms to help with that process. And again, that's something Brie will present in a bit. Next slide, please. Yeah, I think we probably don't have time for this. So maybe we can skip this. And the next one as well. Yep. Okay. I just want to at the very end touch on this global community aspect, because it's something that I hold really dear to my heart. And really the reason why I've stayed in BfE for 5 years, and I can see myself staying in the foreseeable future. So I'm right now in this global management position, and we are really coordinating between the different parties. So student chapter team, student volunteers like Alec that are doing an amazing job in running our program. We have global volunteers, typically junior professionals that have been working for 1 to 5 years that are looking to find some projects to spend their time on, to do something for social good, or to try out something that they are not able to do within their day-to-day work. We also have mentors and partners, so people with 10 years of experience or more that are willing to advise our students, our volunteers, or provide direct assistance to our startups, as well as corporate partners, so companies that are willing to pair with us by sending us mentors or helping us run training workshops. And these people cover a huge range of spectrum of work outside technology. So because we are, because of the very nature of us being an incubator, so we have a lot of strong consultants, people from finance, legal background, and even people from communications, marketing background. And one thing I've been finding really interesting is that BfE is the place for me to find all these people with various backgrounds that have a shared passion in social causes, in startups, and in issues in developing countries. So all the things that I personally really care about. And throughout my years here, I've made really close friendships. I have formed really valuable professional connections. And some of the people that I work really closely with, I've never even met them in real life because they live in a country that I've never been to. And to me, that's a really, really fascinating aspect of BfE. And especially during COVID, this is kind of like really a place for me to escape all the frustrations we are facing in our work right now. And yeah, finally, next slide, please. I just want to give credits to all the people that are currently working in the global management team, because this is really the work that we've been doing in technology is really a team effort. So these people are spending a lot of time in their respective areas, helping to build this division. And really a lot of my work beyond coordinating you just to advocate for the good work that they've been doing. And I also want to emphasize that we are currently still in active recruitment for a number of positions, which are all available on our opportunities website. So whether you want to join our management team for like a more long-term role as a global manager, whether you want to just join as a volunteer for several weeks on the project, or if you want to join as a mentor to help advise our entrepreneurs directly, there's always an opportunity for you, and we do not have any geographical restrictions. So yeah, do check those opportunities out, and we will be staying around at the end of the event to answer any questions. Thank you very much, and I'll pass it back to Alec.
Yeah, thank you, Kevin. That was very informative. So next we'll be diving into the algorithm design project presentation led by Brittany. So I'll hand it off to her now.
Hello, thank you for the introduction. So yeah, I'm Brie, and I'll be talking a little bit about a project we started on a number of months ago. And this is, yeah, as Kevin mentioned, it's a project for BfE where we were trying to basically find a project that, or find a space in BfE which needed some, just some help in getting a little bit more efficient, because at the moment it's a little bit slow. So with that. So a couple of times a year, BfE brings in startups. And what we know is that at the moment, you know, a couple of times a year, we have a startup group of around about 7, and we have around about 20 mentors that, you know, sign up to be a part of this cohort. And manually, our matches go through and they find good pairs. So basically a good pair for each startup, and then they assign a student team. Now, this is a difficult process, which is the next one, because yeah, you have to go through quite a lot of information. Let's go next. Oh yeah, sorry. All I wanted to mention is that, yeah, so as Kevin said, we are constantly growing. So while we have just a few startups and just a few mentors per cohort at the moment, this is only going to get larger. So we're trying to make this a little bit faster. Okay, so at the moment, let's have this cohort this year. We had 7 startups, 20 mentors. So together, that's 140 possible combinations. Now, the good thing about our mentors is that normally you could effectively randomly assign a mentor to a startup and it'd be a pretty good match. But thankfully, our matches do this a little bit with a little bit more skill. And they start by looking at the basic information. So things like industry, location of a startup, sort of getting to know it, figure out where it was founded, what kind of revenue we're looking at. And then on the mentor side, they have characteristics like their location, sort of what kind of mentorship they're actually interested in, and yeah, what skills they can offer the startup. So you could go a step further with that, as our matches do, and they go and they read this onboarding survey, which is filled in by the startups. And that has really intricate information, like things like the target market, the specific social problem that the startup is trying to address, a specific description of the product, and so on. It's quite a long document. And just an aside, this started, some of it is simple, but a lot of it is quite complex. So you have some things like what chapter you belong to is quite easy to sort, but then there are lists of talking about the exact problem that you want to solve. It is quite unstructured data. So yeah, it's quite human. Okay, so on the mentor side, you have, as well as your basic information, each mentor fills in a set of preferences for each startup. And they also have reasons for these preferences. So this is yet another very human aspect of this process, where some mentors will have, perhaps they'll know someone in the industry, or maybe they have a specific reason to want to be involved in that startup. And these things are quite hard to compute. And also our matches go one step further, and they do things like Googling each mentor to make sure that they're not busy recently or haven't been occupied with something else. They look through their LinkedIn to see exactly what kind of jobs they've done and exactly how suited they will be to this role. So it's quite a long process. And want to go next? So in summary, for every single startup, you read their onboarding survey to get accustomed to sort of what the needs of the startup are. And then they need to read over basic information for every mentor, basic information for every startup, consider the preferences of the mentors, and then load all of this into your brain, identify a couple of candidates for every startup, do sort of a tentative assignment, and then just iterate through over and over again, trying to find the best possible matches. So this is a really long process. Keeping this amount of information in your brain is difficult, and yeah, for them to be doing it manually, as these cohorts get bigger and bigger, it will just be more and more of a challenge. So we decided to sort of add value in a couple of ways here. We basically wanted to do most of the heavy lifting and then allow the matches to come in later and sort of finish off. So a couple of things came to mind. Firstly, it's pretty easy to visualize preferences for startups. So all you need to do is just plot every mentor and then like which startups they actually choose to work with. And then that gives you a really quick representation and a really quick shortlist of what mentors might be the most interested. And secondly, the industry and the role and the skill set of the mentors and then the problem of the startups, they have a lot of things in common. So we chose this area to sort of reduce a bit of complexity, sort of come up with some kind of relational score. Okay, so yeah, as I said, this is a very human process, and you cannot overestimate the amount of effort and time that is put into this to get a really good mentor and startup pair at the moment. And so we sort of acknowledge that with our time and resources, we were not going to be able to match that computationally. And so what we tried to do instead is sort of produce a sort of draft. So what we wanted to do is get not the optimal solution, but get close. And so that allows the matches, the tool to do it properly at the end and sort of choose a really good match at the end. And it also just gets, if they're obvious matches, they're just easy to get done, basically. So produce one possible solution and also a way to sort of analyze them. Okay, yeah, so let's go through how to make this. So there are a couple of features that are really important in making a good match for mentors and startups. One, the chapter has to match. If they have to be in the same location in the world, just because time zones are a little bit hard to jump. And secondly, the mentor's preference for the startup is the main driving feature. No matter how well a startup fits with a mentor, the mentor has to choose to be there. So those things are really, really important. So to assess the fit bit, we decided to sort of integrate the mentor's capabilities and their interests and their skills with the needs of the startup. And to do this, we decided to use a little bit of NLP. Okay, so the workflow is sort of split up into these sections. Firstly, you've got some manual data selection. So this is taking things like that onboarding survey, taking things like the survey sent out to mentors and sort of merging this into some basic spreadsheets. Secondly, processing that data, so padding it out, removing irrelevant words, just making everything standard. And lastly, using a couple of models. So we did TF-IDF and also a BERT model, and we went through and used a couple of cohorts that were from the past to sort of train these parameters and make sure that the models were actually producing a good fit that a human might actually do. Okay, so a little bit more detail. Basically, this is an overview of what the basic entry data looks like. As you can see, they're just spreadsheets. They're pretty easy to make if you have the right data. So it's a good starting point, but yeah, it's very unstructured and just a lot of keywords, basically. Okay, so the model itself, the first step is keyword extraction. So for every mentor, for every startup, you get a list of words that are very important. So a list of words that are very useful in discriminating between mentors and startups. So some examples that we have here is one particular mentor might have like technology, hunger, food, and agriculture as their like associated keywords. Now, this is clearly an indication of how you can mix skills with the industry as well, which is great. Okay, so a little bit more detail. On the left here, we have a representation of how these words might have different embeddings. Okay, so as you can see in the red up there is a sentence, and below it are examples of different features, which are different embeddings, which you use to describe that string at the top. So take the second word, my. It has a token, it has a segment, and it has a position. And these three characteristics can be added together. And then for that entire string, they can also be added together. And you get this very multi-dimensional sort of situation going on, which ultimately describes something as simple as a mentor, or here an orange. And it's represented here on the right as sort of a Cartesian plane, where we just plot where that mentor is and where that startup is. And using cosine similarity, generate a score between 0 and 1, which represents how close those two are. Okay, so the output looks like this. So everyone gets a score between 0 and 1. So you can pretty easily see that there are some really good fits, and then some mentors just don't fit very well with any startup. Some startups do really well. So yes, this is our model. So now that we have it, we can combine it with the other metrics that we have. Firstly, this is our first visualization. So this is just like a Plotly interactive plot here. And it shows the fit per mentor for every startup. So across the x-axis here, you have different startups. And then on the y, we have the fit score. You can hover over on each of these and see a little bit more detail about the mentor that you're highlighting. But yeah, as you can see, like on the right here, we have indicated this like red bubble at the top, where there might be a really good fit between a startup and a mentor, but that mentor has no preference for that startup. So there's no real point in making a pair. On the left here, you have so a purple one right on the bottom, where you've got a really low fit score, but that mentor really wants to work with the startup. So yeah, you can, this is one of those graphs that you can like have a look at as a manual matcher and just like get a good sense of where these mentors are. Okay, so our final assignment, we had to find a way to get a draft effectively. And so we had a couple of requirements. One, chapters have to match. And second, preference is the key driving factor. And so for this, we have basically 3 variables. We've got preference, fit, and match. And by having match as a multiplied variable here, we have basically the effect of if it's 0 and they don't match, the fit score is 0, which is pretty easy, but of course you can change that. And yeah, just having independent weights for preference and fit just allows some tuning based on cohort. So from this, you get your cost matrix, and from this, you can use the assignment problem to just really easily find the optimum set of matches across the whole cohort. Okay, so these are our products. So on the left here, we have the assignment table. So this is really simple. This is what we recommend based on the information that we can compute. This is what we think is going to be the most successful. On the right here, we have some heavily redacted plots where this is per startup. So this is like one plot per startup, basically. And on the x-axis here, we have fit score, and on the y-axis is preference. So it's all the information that goes into that fit. So ideally, you would have a mentor that has a really good preference for that startup and also fits really well. But in this case, this point is somewhat close to that corner. And so that's probably the mentor that was chosen for this startup. But if you did have a case where maybe a mentor pulls out, or maybe you have a specific mentor to choose, you can pull up this plot and really quickly have a look at where it fits, and then maybe choose a mentor nearby in the space. And just, this is the kind of plot where it's so much easier to look at this rather than a spreadsheet and actually have to recalculate in your head which ones fit better. So yeah, this plot in general and one per startup, it will just make the whole process a little bit easier. Okay, so in summary, we took all of the data that we could and used an NLP and some linear assignment to produce basically a starting point, a draft for the mentor startup assignment. We have one recommendation and we have a couple of visual aids which will help in the human process. And yeah, basically, we're allowing for things like fine tunings at the end. We're allowing for things like manual selection. So it's a very flexible tool. And it's able just to be changed and used to fit the needs of the user. And the best thing is it's entirely in a Google Colab, so there's no installation problems. And you can just mount a Google Drive, and all you need is some basic spreadsheets to get going. So it's hopefully very easy to use. All right, thanks. Thanks for your time.
All right, thank you so much, Brie. That was very informative, and I really like how comprehensive the model is. So now we'll turn it over to Shin-Lo for the data analytics and BfE.
Thanks, Alec. Thank you. And hello, everyone. I'll introduce myself first. So my name is Xing, and I'm a year 1 PhD student at Imperial College London. At BfE, I'm the global algorithm and analytics manager. I'm very happy today to join everyone and to share what kind of work we do at data analytics. So basically from Brie's talk, you might have had some idea on how a project would look like in one of the 3 pillars at BfE Tech, namely algorithm. And now I'm going to give a brief overview of another very closely related pillar, i.e. DA, data analytics. So basically, if I were to kind of summarize DA in 3 words, so that would be, what we do would be impact research, optimization, and also decision making. So the impact research, the impact research, that's something Kevin mentioned in his presentation as well. Basically, we want to, in a data-driven way, think about how we should kind of improve the structure of BfE as an organization. An example, I'll give an example just to illustrate this. So basically, we have what we call diversity metrics. So the idea is that we, at BfE, we provide services to social enterprises, and many of them aim to follow the 17 Sustainable Development Goals of the United Nations. So these Sustainable Development Goals, also known as SDGs, we need to think about what kind of metrics we can use to quantify how well these startups have fulfilled these goals. And also another area that's interesting to us is that we want to kind of have similar metrics for how well we have been doing to fulfill these goals. So that would be one example of impact research. Moving on to the second point, optimization. I guess it's pretty self-explanatory. So we want to increase our productivity or improve our branding through data-centric analysis. And I'll give another example for this. So there's a project called SEO, which stands for Search Engine Optimization, that was going on at BfE a few months ago. And basically the idea of this is that we have funds for our Google ad campaign, and we want to design keywords which we should use to maximize the number of visits to our website. And so the idea is that we want to identify keywords, we want to attract people from different backgrounds and also from different geographical locations, and that would possibly involve, possibly mean that we need different keywords, different bag of keywords for different kind of profiles. So there was a team that was doing this kind of analysis, and they did some very nice testing. And this is another example that we want to use this analytics to improve our operations. And finally, decision-making. Well, these analyses will eventually influence how we make decisions at BfE Tech, but also when we collaborate with other divisions at BfE, and those divisions might have direct interactions with social enterprises, because we're an internal-facing team for the DA, so we don't directly interact with our clients, but we could help the other divisions on their projects, which would have those direct interactions. And with that, if we go to the next slide, I'll briefly talk about what a DA project would look like, what the life cycle of a DA project would look like. Basically, as I mentioned, we are internal facing, so we don't interact with startups directly. What we would typically have is requests from other divisions. So when the other teams are doing the consulting works with startups, they might encounter some technical problems. And depending on the technicality required, that will be assigned to one of the 3 pillars at BfE Tech. So if it's more like software and development, we have a designated team for that. If it involves some, I guess, machine learning and some algorithms, then that will go to the algorithm pillar. If it's more like business plus data analysis, but not too much algorithmic design, they will be handled by DA. So after it's been assigned, if we go to the next slide, please. It will just go through some I guess, usual some iterations between these 4 steps to kind of carry out the analysis. And these will be done by the students. So basically, the students will carry out some, I guess, well, some bit of coding maybe, but more like visualization or summarization. And eventually, the idea is to be able to influence the strategy and also give some advice. And finally, the end products, i.e. the analysis, will be presented to the internal team that made this request. And decisions will be made according to the recommendations given by the student team. So hopefully that gave an overview of what we do at DA. I understand that was very, very brief. Any questions, I guess, please feel free to ask me during the Q&A session at the end. But as Kevin said, we are actively looking for volunteers. Whether you want to become a mentor in the DA team or whether you want to join our management team, we're always happy to have a chat. So with that, thank you, and hand back to Alec.
All right, thank you so much. That was super helpful and gave a very good overview of what the data analytics team does. So finally, for our last portion, we'll be speaking about software infrastructure and DevOps, and I'll be turning it back to Kevin.
Yeah, thank you very much, Alec. So now that we have taken a close overview of algorithms and analytics, I think it's really good that we cycle back to software development. For software development projects, basically it's very close to what Xing has presented in terms of the project lifecycle. So I really want to focus on DevOps and infrastructure. So the things that we are currently doing in BfE, which were only, I guess, at the very start, but we are really looking to match what companies would do at an industry standard. So firstly, why does DevOps matter to BfE Tech? I've already said this in my earlier presentation, but really it is because we are having a lot of global volunteers contributing different features to a product that has a version that's alive out there and that has things that need to be tested and things that need to be integrated. So we cannot, and because we are all volunteers spending a few hours on the weekend to do this, so we cannot afford to have someone to do your traditional click ops to manually set up the infrastructure and set up the environment whenever we want to test something. So to have DevOps in our pipeline, I think it's a very natural step as we scale our organization, and it's actually something that we have already built. We have built a very simple DevOps pipeline, I would say, behind the public website that's currently available. So Ella, if you go to the next slide. Given overview of what our current approach is like, which is by no means perfect, but something that we believe works right now, we basically make sure that we Dockerize everything that we have in our development. So every developer on their local environment will receive a Docker that has basically the same setup as the production environment, except for removing, I guess, a lot of the bulky data. They can develop it within their own Docker. And then, if we go to the next slide, they will all come together. Well, the code in each of those Dockers, the changes that they are making to the core code base will come to GitHub, go to the corresponding branches. And as for branch management, we are currently also doing a very simple approach following the standard GitHub branch management model that you can just usually the first image you get from Google. And so code management is one thing, but really deployment and integration is the heartbeat of DevOps. So we are not using Jenkins or other, I guess, DevOps software that companies may use. One because of budget constraint, and another because we like to use the latest tools that the community is using. So we are using GitHub Action, which is quite new, but has been working really smoothly because of how it integrates very well with GitHub. So on GitHub Action, for those of you who don't know yet, it's essentially a series of code that you tell GitHub that can be triggered by a pull request merging into the branch or triggered by a manual click of a button. And then when in our GitHub action, basically when the event is triggered, say a pull request is submitted, the GitHub action will build Docker on GitHub's temporary server. That's the same as a Docker that people have on DevOps projects. So just to make sure that Docker image can be built from the code that's being committed. We are also, we haven't had this setup yet, but we are looking to put in some automated checks, things that are standardized checks for any code commitment to make sure that they don't violate things that we want the code to have. And then as for deployment, we use Terraform. So again, this is something that's quite new to the community, but it's really growing. So it follows this practice called infrastructure as code. So essentially Terraform is like this code configuration files that you can write and you can use to tell main cloud providers like Azure, AWS, DigitalOcean, how you want to set up your virtual nets, how you want to set up the subnets, and where you want to put the servers and configurations, etc. So instead of going into Azure dashboard and manually clicking saying that I want to create this virtual net right now and what its specifications should be, all of this are done through Terraform code that's executed by GitHub Action. So it allows an organization that's kind of budget constrained like us to easily set up a test environment that's identical to the production environment, or to easily scale or descale the environment according to our current resources needs. Right, and Alex, if you can go to the next slide. So the final question is really database, right? So version controlling for database is always quite tricky. And the approach we are using right now is basically every one of our developers will receive seed data. And so the seed data and the data schema, they are being version controlled in GitHub. But the bulky bit, the full production self-data is not version controlled. So whenever people have done testing with the seed data and the code to make sure everything is all right, there'll be an extra step in integrating with production level data. And that's done collectively by the people developing the project and the data ops manager and DevOps manager in the global team. And we are setting up one pipeline for each of these three products. So the one for the public website has already been set up, and the other two are pending to be set up. And as I've said, we only started adopting this in January this year. So there are still quite a number of gaps, improving the way we do deployment, the way we do automatic checks. There are some security patches that can be done. And if you are interested in DevOps or infrastructure, and if you have read our opportunities website posting, you will see a list of 6 projects that we currently list out, which are some of the things that we feel are quite urgent to complement our DevOps pipeline. So in a nutshell, I think what BfE is really, what makes BfE software development work or DevOps work is really interesting is because we are at a scale where we have a lot of people contributing to the same product. And we are also very fortunate to enjoy Azure non-profit grants and other grants from various cloud providing companies. So we are able to try to adopt a very agile and good DevOps practice as what people are doing in the industry. Also because we are just at the very beginning, so we are not like existing company that has already heavily invested in some old DevOps infrastructure. So if you are to join us at this point, there are really a lot of room for you to try out the things that you want and try to learn what's the best thing in the industry. We also have quite a number of mentors that are familiar with these kind of things because through their own startup experiences or through their own infrastructure experiences. And in fact, the pipeline that we set up in January, when I was building it, I was basically handheld by a startup CTO in London to work through the process as how he would do it in a startup. So yeah, I think there's a lot of exciting things in the space, and I will cut short here. If you have any more questions about infrastructure and DevOps, you can come to speak to me at Q&A. Thank you. Oh, sorry, final point. I think I've talked about a lot of technical details, so I just want to mention a few points in case you're considering applying for the infrastructure roles, because we have received an unexpected large volume of applications this year. So I think these are some things that may be interesting to you. So we do value people with a very strong software development background, because if you have not built an app, then it's very hard for you to then build a pipeline that teaches app developers how to integrate their code. So that's something we do value. And passion in learning about infrastructure is really important. We value passion more than experience, actually, because we know that we are all volunteering here, and that our main day-to-day work is like our first priority. So we don't really care if you have learned you have not had any DevOps experience, or you haven't you're not doing DevOps in your work. We are all here to learn. The important thing is you can demonstrate that you have the passion to learn it. Maybe you have done some reading on your own, you have searched for the concepts and try to make efforts to understand it. So that would really be important to us. And organization and communication skills are important, because when you set up these pipelines, you need to get the developers on board with it. So it's not something that you can just build and leave. So yeah. And finally, as with any BfE roles, we really value passion in our work, because again, we are non-profit. We have a shared vision on the things that we want to build. So things can get like boring and dry in the process of working, especially when working in tech. So we believe that if you share our vision in using your professional skills to make this world a better place, then you would be a really good fit for BfE. Yeah, I think that's all I have to share. Yeah.
Thank you so much to Kevin, Brie, and Xing for presenting today. I think this is very informative, and hopefully you came out of this event learning a little bit more about what Bridges for Enterprise is, what our tech team does, and the different elements that are involved being a part of our tech team or being a mentor in our tech team. So I think now is a good time for us to hop on over to GatherTown. So Kevin, would you be able to put the link in the chat, please, for GatherTown? And if you don't see in the chat, the same link can be found with our link tree. So linktree bfe.tech. But thank you so much for attending today, and we hope it was very informative. So the link is already there. So we'll see you all in GatherTown. Thank you again for everyone that was able to come.
Thanks.
Yeah.